Hi, and welcome to the Route to CISO Podcast. It's me, Chris Rides. I'm going to be your host, and I'm going to be chatting to seasoned Chief Information Security Officers about their career journeys. We're going to be unencrypting their real-life stories and searching for the hidden keys to help you fast-track your cybersecurity career. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Route to CISO Podcast with Chris Rides. This is part 2 of my conversation with Melina Scotto. It's been a whole week for you guys. It's been a few seconds for us. So I should probably share that when we were sort of cut this off at part 1, we were just talking about Melina's first step into a CISO role and how she networked her way and how important it is for people to know you as much as it's who you know. So I think that's a great part for us to sort of move on to what happened next in Melina's career. And then we got lots of other interesting things to talk about. So thank you for rejoining me, Melina.
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
So yeah, we were talking about your first CISO role and how that came about. How was that as an experience for you? Did you have expectations of what being a CISO would be like?
Well, no, I had learned earlier in my career, because I had this crazy thing, which we didn't talk about, but I wanted to be a CIO before I turned 40.
Okay.
This was kind of what I was on the IT manager track. And so
yeah.
I don't know why that was, but I did catch a CIO role in the .com bubble.
Okay.
But believe me, it was short-lived, but I did learn. I thought that the whole world would be kissing my behind. That's what I thought being a CIO was. But in fact, there were just, bigger, scarier behinds to kiss. You're bored and so forth. And so I didn't really, have crazy high expectations that, the world would start, bowing down to the great CISO. But I did, the role ended up being somewhat of a fixer, because, as you can imagine, lots of contracts, lots of different federal CISO counterparts, lots of different risks, which I don't think I'm spilling any tea, right? At the time, and maybe we could offer up perhaps still federal government's highly wavered environment. There are still a lot of legacy systems. There are still, a lot of vulnerabilities that, folks are coping with and getting compensating controls for and so forth. There was a huge third-party downstream, which was always kind of like, they could fall victim to a ransomware attack or something like that. So the role quickly became very much a fixer role. What's blowing up today? And what, who do I need to talk to? Which agency am I going to today? I had 3 offices, one near CMS, one in the National Institutes of Health, and one over in corporate in Falls Church. So I was kind of everywhere. It was manic. It was fun. I did a lot of talking, which I love. So just to kind of promote the myriad of services that we were building at the time for different agencies, as well as a cyber center of excellence, working with those folks, working with counterparts on mission systems and things that had nothing to do with federal health. But again, if they needed cybersecurity language and we could pitch in, we're all part of the same team. So,
right.
So I was kind of everywhere. I loved it.
Sounds like a really varied role.
It was wonderful. And I had maybe 125 ESOs. So each program had like their own information kind of security. So we knew so many people across the organization, just hundreds and hundreds. It was just so great. One thing that I was able to establish there, which I've continued to do everywhere I've gone, is a half an hour training session, either on a Friday or Thursday, usually during the week. Called it different things: Cyber Hive, Cyber Talk, Cyber Chat, whatever. But just a place to get together and say, all right, let me read over all of the things that I think we should all be reading over, you know, in terms of what did CISA just put out? What are the exploitable vulnerabilities, right? Here's someplace you can go for a quickie, half an hour of all the things you need to know. What's an interesting story that's out there? After we covered all of the kind of exploitable vulnerabilities, we're like, have you heard about this hack that's going to, you know, something that was topical in the news? Maybe a few questions if folks were going for the CISSP or going for the CEH or something, a couple of sample questions, just kind of whet their appetite. The idea is that it's appropriate for a cyber expert, you know, all the way to a cyber curious kind of person, you know, who just wanted to, you know, learn a little bit more, or, you know, from the help desk all the way up to the CIO if they wanted to kind of come and listen. And I was super proud of that. That got accepted in the federal space as official role-based training for people with cybersecurity in their titles and so forth. So that was really great. And I would submit those things and keep a library of them. Super proud of that. And that was something that I really enjoyed bringing to the role. And that was just kind of an easy place where people could ask weird questions if they wanted to. There was no question that was too off the wall. You know, if you're asking it, 10 other people might want to, you know, have some curiosity about the same thing. And so, or even if it was, you know, really kind of off the wall, then, hey, it gave us a laugh. And, you know, I don't know, it was always a good time. You know, someplace where I think I really left my mark there in that first CISO position.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think it's important for a few things. You know, certainly you've got that sort of building relationships with other stakeholders or team members, and building that ability to feel free to ask questions where you might think they're silly. But the fact is that like this is how we all work, right? As you said, and I try and encourage people when I'm doing the webinars, if you've got a question and you really want to ask it and you're not sure whether to ask it, there is almost certainly 10 other people in that room that are thinking that question. And if nobody asks it, nobody gets it answered. So yeah, no bad questions, right?
That's it. We also often did a get to know each other series, because sometimes you're on these calls and, you know, maybe someone on the call doesn't have necessarily cybersecurity in their title, but they're a system engineer that might be remediating some of these vulnerabilities that are so important for us to, you know, attack. So we would also do kind of a get to know your team kind of thing.
Yeah. It's especially when a lot of these teams are distributed, right? It's even more important probably than ever now for us to be doing this sort of stuff.
Right. Traditionally, there were all these silos, right? And engineering was over here and operations was here. Maybe developer teams were over here, and nobody wanted to go over to the cybersecurity silo. You know, quite the contrary. That's where I think for many years they put the trouble people. Right? So,
troublemakers this way.
You guys just go over there. But I think after I think it was NIST 161 came out, like maybe in 2014, after the OPM breach, right? People said, you know, maybe this isn't the way to do things, where we're not really talking to each other and we're in these silos and stuff, and you're just bolting on cybersecurity at the end of this process, kind of thing. Maybe if we have a layer of cybersecurity in all of these silos, then that gets the job done better. And I couldn't agree more with that. The whole baking in cybersecurity into your system development lifecycle, your software development lifecycle, so important.
Yeah, it's that's something I think that's been discussed many times in terms of cost savings when there are issues. You know, putting the stuff and doing the fixes afterwards is way more expensive.
Right, and gut wrenching. Right, you've got these teams that have worked so hard. They've got this delivery date, and then, you know, the ISO says, you know, and that propagates that whole department of no.
Yes,
that we want to get away from, right? If we know it's coming, you know, we can get a team together. We can scale up if it needs to jump out fast, you know, whatever the case may be. But, you know, on the day is not the day of, that it's going to be released into production is not the time to say, oh yeah, maybe we should go through a cyber review. Much faster and less painful to get it started as early as your budget,
Right.
as early as you can, and build that in. So
Yeah.
SSDLC kind of look. So.
And this was this was all General Dynamics. Is that
yes,
right?
Yeah. GDIT.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what were you doing? So tell me about your move after that, because it was a bit of a change, right?
It was a bit of a change. I just come off of a big winning bid in military health. And I was just flying high. And this was a case where a lovely recruiter kind of kept pinging me on LinkedIn, ping and ping and ping. Okay, Melina, I got the perfect job for you. I got the perfect role for you. I got the, we've got to talk. And like, again, that bullet point of persistence. Was his persistence as well. Fantastic guy, Ray Inman. And I said, this guy must be insane. Like, I've been a federal girly forever. Maybe if it was healthcare, like I would get it, because that kind of makes sense. But hospitality, that just seems so weird. But we had gone through these messaging exchanges maybe 5 times, and I just kind of picked up the phone and said, let me just talk to this guy, because you do kind of your, I don't know, social media math, and he has a lot of followers. I don't want to be a jerk. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're like, we might as well.
I call him. It turns out though, you should never call a recruiter.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I mean, I get it.
So I call, and he's like, Melina, I've been waiting for your call. You know what I mean? we know each other forever. But he so knew me. It blew my mind again. He said, Melina, I see that you've done this thing, and we're doing this thing, and you've got certified for cloud, and we're transitioning this to cloud. Lots of specifics I can't talk about, but he really knew my resume. He really knew some of the projects that I was known for. I don't know who he talked to. It wasn't like it was all there in the resume or all there.
Yeah,
in the
must have
LinkedIn
known. Again,
really,
who knows you, right? Somebody.
No idea. But that process for a Fortune 500 was wild. Again, I had kind of come up through the system and engineering, and people knew me, and I never really been through this process. But I said, look, you seem like a nice guy. I don't think I'm the right person. I'll have a go. So 9 interviews, 3 personality tests, and a background check later. I was already security cleared, so I kind of knew I'd pass that portion, but I didn't know personality checks were a thing. But anyway, I got the job, and it was a fascinating run. I have a non-disclosure with them, so I have to be very careful about what I say. But I think that it is safe to say for any Fortune 500, and certainly the ones now that I'm partnering with for some of the advisory teams and stuff like that, we are fighting the same people. So where I was thinking when I was talking to Ray, the incredible recruiter, hey, I'm not the right person for this. Let's go back to basics. Indicators of compromise are the same. TTPs, tactics, techniques, and practices of these attackers are the same. In fact, the actual cyber criminals are the same. Their day job might have been attacking me at a federal agency, right, for their nation state, but their side hustle is with like Chris and Melina's ransomware company, right? And so it's like, so we're actually fighting the same things. And good cyber hygiene is good cyber hygiene, no matter whether you're. There was a little bit of a difference in frameworks, right? So certainly FISMA world likes NIST, and Fortune 500 world maybe leans closer to an ISO 27002 thing. But whether you're an 853 or 27002, the controls are the controls. They're really not too different. You look at your CIS benchmarks. You make sure. My favorite pet peeve is you've got SE Linux on all of your Linux. Old Linux boxes, and it's not in permissive mode, right? You're making sure that you're patching religiously, and you're trying to get away from this heavily wavered style. And I will say that Fortune 500s, I think, have that over the federal government. They're not really looking to be wavered in any way because they don't have that great big tick around them,
Right.
Um, so um, so they're much less likely to have a bunch of waivers going on for these things.
Right.
But yeah, it was fascinating. I learned so much. I absolutely loved every minute of it. Fabulous teams, but the ability to kind of strike out on your own, that siren, and kind of the SEC wanted more, cybersecurity in these boards, and so I said, well, now's the time. So I'm loving what I'm doing, and that gig had much less of a fixer kind of mentality and more of a faster. We have competition out there in Fortune 500 world. How are we going to deliver the latest and greatest, whatever it is that we're doing, the fastest we can?
Fast
So,
and secure. Yeah. Get it done.
absolutely. Oh,
Right.
absolutely. Right. Still have to go through all of the same control checks and so forth, but how can we arrange teams like a little better? How can we eke out, a few less days on these assessments so that we bring it to market faster? It was fascinating stuff. Also, kind of the language of cybersecurity for the Fortune 500 was different than the language of cybersecurity for federal contracting, because I was very much selling something, selling a solution in the federal contracting space. In the Fortune 500 space, I was very much buying something.
Right.
And so then all of the language became very legalese. We were very close with the legal department. What does this MSA look like? How are they trying to water down any cybersecurity language that we might be putting in here, particularly for all of these third-party kind of downstream things? On the federal side, they had to follow FISMA or say that they did. You know what I mean? A lot of this was attestation over testing, which is probably we could talk about that.
Yeah, that's another podcast for sure, right?
Yeah. But suffice to say, the language was so much different. I did spend a lot of time, more time there with legal and contracts than I ever did, ironically, in federal contracting.
Yeah, that's it's funny how the differences are often things that you don't think they will be, right? You don't know that until you speak to somebody that's done both of those things. You wouldn't think that they would be the differences. Well, it's good. It's good to hear there's other great recruiters out there, because I know there are. There is a lot of recruitment bashing, and I'll be honest with you, there's some terrible recruiters, lots of them, more terrible ones than good ones, but there are good ones out there. And once you find your good ones, you need to keep close to them, because they're pretty good people. The ones I know are. Even many of my competitors, I enjoy hanging out with them. I enjoy meeting up with them when I see them at conferences and stuff. So I'm not going to give them any shout outs, of course, but it doesn't mean I don't enjoy hanging out with them.
Yeah, tell me later. But it is kind of this little kind of secret society of really good people that you
there's good people out there.
No, I would definitely shout out Ray Inman. He was fantastic. Another one of the angels, on the journey.
Yes. Yeah. Well, talking about your angels, that's a lovely sort of smooth move across to something I was going to ask you about. I was going to ask you about CISOs and attributes, and we've talked about a few of them and the things that you've seen, but I would love you to think about sort of the CISOs that do a great job, maybe some of those people that mentored you, and you can absolutely give them a shout out. Please do. Any CISOs you want to shout out, let me know. Maybe I can tap them up for an episode of this. But also,
would you?
Tell me about the attributes. Yeah, tell me about what things that they did really well.
That would be great. I think the first person that comes to mind is Mike Baker. So while I was CISO over federal health, he was CISO over like kind of the whole umbrella of GDIT. And I didn't check with him first, but but
you won't give anything away.
I don't think I am. In that he really taught me about being concise, particularly when you're speaking to a board. I think the first board presentation that I gave to him, maybe like, I don't know, I only had 6 minutes or something. And it must have had 15 slides or something like that. There was no way we were going to get through all of this. This was for this kind of idea I had. He and Christy Grinnell were really great. They had this kind of be bold, give us your ideas kind of thing. And I had an idea to take folks from their degree to a CISSP, kind of along this kind of journey of roles throughout the organization that they could kind of start with their degree and maybe, a SOC team role, and then kind of matriculate up as they got maybe a Security Plus first, and then a CEH, and then a CISSP.
Yeah.
Kind of, turns out there was already a program that was very similar to that, but neither here nor there. It was a lot of fun, and he really talked to me about hitting your points quickly and making that translation from engineer back in the lab, to communicator of business risk, right? Because cyber risk is business risk. So let's make sure that we're taking all these business folks with us in a way that they understand our language.
Yeah. That as an attribute. I went out and asked sort of around, it's over 500 CISOs. This was, I started a couple of years back and sort of put together all of this data and ended up with the top 10 of attributes, which I'll release at some point. There's half a book written about it, so it's gradually getting there. I'm hoping I finish it off this year, but I can tell you that communication absolutely is one of the top attributes that came out. You're going to really struggle to be a good CISO and get the success that you could do if you can't communicate at all levels, from the early stage engineers and the people entering your business right the way through to the board. Regardless of the size of the company that you work for, communication, if you can't practice that and get good at that, and not everybody is, right? You can become a CISO and still need to work on that. So yeah, it's absolutely a top attribute. And it was, did you say Mike Baker that taught you that? Good. Okay. Well, Mike, if you're watching this, I might be tapping you up shortly to be on here for another episode. Who else would you say that's been a CISO that you kind of look up to, or even talk a bit more about some of the people you've mentioned in
I
part
would
one?
say for innovation and just really thinking outside the box, Mark Goodwin, he was a friend and supervisor leader for me through National Cancer Institute work that we did, and now he's a CISO. I think it's Wake County over in North Carolina now.
Okay.
And when they had the storms and lost all the power for forever and ever, he started buying satellite links because there was no electricity and it wasn't going to be on for, weeks and weeks. And so for really thinking outside of the box and doing things in kind of brave mix of new school, old school, he is just the best. And I don't think he'd mind me mentioning it.
And it's Mark. That's Mark Goodwin, did you say?
Mark Goodwin, just a wonderful, great human being, and as well as a beer maker out there with Johnson Brewing Company, and also and also a fabulous.
That sounds like a guy where I should be going to him to meet.
Should.
But you said brewing company, which could be the magic words.
Yeah. It's just one of those odd things. You'll have to have him on the show too, and ask him about how that kind of all came to be from kind of, I think, a college interest to guys who put something together to like a real brewing company now.
He's got a full brewing company. That's insane. I know. I've got a bunch of good friends in our industry, and they're all about barrel aging cocktails. So especially whiskey cocktails. So yeah, I was around one of their houses not so long ago, and he's just bought a new fired oak barrel, and he was like having stuff delivered, and he was like, he's cutting up bits of vanilla. Can you throw those in? And so yeah, I don't know what it is, but I think there's people about that sort of that brewing and cocktail, and maybe it's I hope not to lean on the stressful parts of the job and relaxing into it, but I don't, I won't say I'm dulling my senses.
We could
but
talk burnout next or something like that. No, but I think it's that Edison piece that I think that makes CISOs so good at what they do. Well, no 2 days are the same, right? And few of us are Einsteins. Let's be right. But there are a lot of Edisons around here that have tried different things and been in kind of the engineering or probably in the audit side as well. They're just kind of using the experience that they've gotten, apply it to new things and so forth. And I think that as a hobby, sure, it would translate to the brewing or the oak cast or whatever.
Yeah.
So
I think they're passionate people in our industry are passionate people, right? So they get very passionate about certain things, and they tend to be a lot of tinkerers, right? And they have different, there's one CISO I know who is a really, really good friend, and he's been doing loads of glass blowing. So that's his thing, right? So
create.
Yes, creative people. Maybe that's where the music stuff comes in as well. Maybe there's just a lot of creative people. We're frustrated creative people that would like to make full-time careers. It sounds like Mark has. If he started a brewery, he's actually managed it. But we do security and other stuff so that we've got the money to be able to afford to do the fun stuff that we do outside of work when we get the odd day off.
That's right. Right. There's never truly a day off.
Yeah, when the phone doesn't ring, maybe it's a weekend and the phone doesn't ring at least.
That's it.
Well, there's a couple of other things I want to ask you about. Well, first off, I mean, is there any other CISOs that come to mind? Anybody else that we should shout out? If not, I've got a couple of other things I want to.
I'm sure there are, but those are my top two.
There you go. Okay. Good. Well, the thing I wanted to jump to next was just to ask about really the staffing side, because, we've talked about your career. You've been a hiring manager for a long time. You talked about building teams, writing proposals with teams, even when the teams sometimes ended up being a little bit smaller than what they were proposed to be. But when you go out and you hire people, it is a tough market. And right now, I think we do have a lot of people in cybersecurity. You alluded to it right at the beginning, right? AI is going to have an impact. And I think actually, if you understand it and learn AI and understand prompt engineering, you might actually do very well out of that and build that into what you want to do in cybersecurity. But how do people stand out at the moment? Because it's a tough market to stand out in.
Well, I guess I'll answer that in two parts. If it's for kind of the federal arena, certs are everything.
Yes. Yep.
Still absolutely, I would even say more than degrees, the thing that kind of gets you in for the interviews, even it's kind of a first cut. The education, I'm of two minds about that, because there never used to be a cybersecurity degree. Right. My degree ended up being in network engineering security or something like that. But you would have all of these roles, and then you would be allowed kind of in the cybersecurity team kind of thing. And so I'm always surprised by kind of new talent that comes out with this beautiful cybersecurity degree. And they're like, well, when am I going to be CISO now?
Right. Like, yeah. I've got the degree.
I mean, that's great, and they teach some great stuff and foundation and framework and so forth, but there seems to be a disconnect, right? They might know how to use Tenable, for instance, right? Or a vulnerability manager, but since they hadn't ever done the job of remediating the thing or adding a patch or whatever, that level of effort piece is missing. They don't know what the level of effort is going to be. And so that's where you kind of get into this kind of like cybersecurity is way up here and disconnected. They don't understand everything that's on our plate, right? So I would recommend, to everybody, get some experience doing the types of things, like the coding, like the help desk, like the patching, so that you really know as a cybersecurity professional what you're asking people to do, where all the ugly toes are, because you've kind of managed it, right? I mean, I know how to secure a network because I understand how many ugly packets I've rolled through, but there's always going to be a little bit of tension between operations and security. And I think the operations people, if they were sitting down to, a certification test or something, they know all the ways that they have to keep things secure, but there's just pressure, right? Of course, keep the business flowing, keep the data flowing. So when I look for, somebody to hire, I want to know that they've kind of done the thing before, or, that they're not just kind of straight out of a 4-year with, this cybersecurity degree, which is great. And I'm all about higher education. It's important, but you either have to have a really great training program on the ground, right? So that you can take these folks from degree to CISO, if you will, right? Because it doesn't just happen. You really have to have that ability to, you might understand how to secure the thing, whatever the thing is, right? But you have to make them want to follow you to do that, right? And so it's kind of a little bit of a different skill set.
Yeah, and I see, and obviously there are, like, from federally, they've started dropping language around needing a degree, right, in some areas, and
yes,
and people are very much more accepting about maybe an associate's, and throughout a lot of these degrees and associate programs, they're actually getting certifications. So they are getting certifications now. I think you're right. I think and a lot of the roles I see are experienced roles, because that's what a recruitment company gets paid to find, right? And so you are looking to get that person that can make it really clear they've got the experience and they've done it before, hands-on. What do you think about the people that are sort of graduating or wanting to transfer into cyber, and they don't have the practical experience? Is there any sort of tips or any ways you think that they can maybe gain that without getting a job? Because it's a bit of a chicken and egg.
Right. It is. I would say if you have a co-op opportunity or an internship opportunity in your summers or in your downtime, certainly take that. At uni or wherever it is you go, earn your extra beer money or whatever it is that you're that you need extra money for, book money, in the help desk there, work at the university there, so that you're coming out not just with a 4-year degree or a 2-year, but with a couple of years of experience. Part-time is okay. Let us know what you've been doing, even on the test. If you've been changing passwords, that kind of counts, right? As some cybersecurity experience. So I would say that I would favor folks right out of college who have done something, some sort of internship, some sort of summer job, something like that. And maybe this is a me thing, but I also tend to prefer caregivers. So maybe it's a military spouse, or maybe it's mom who's returning to the workforce or something like that. But anybody who's been out there for a minute and have cared for children, or maybe older generation folks, if there's a problem-solving piece there that is difficult to teach, right? Because if I said to a single parent, "Hey, we got to stay late tonight because something is, not working with this pet," or whatever the case may be, there's already an internal database going off saying, okay, that means somebody has to pick up somebody has to do dinner, somebody has to, you know what I mean? There's this problem solving that's going on in, just in the personal life, is something as simple as staying late a little bit, that they're already problem solving. That is tough to get from, certainly when I was like right out of college, it just doesn't really compute the same way that somebody who's caring for others really kind of gets that and can kind of quickly problem solve in a way that will take me a couple of years to teach somebody who's never done that before.
Yeah, that's great. I actually think there's a huge opportunity, and I've always thought there's a huge opportunities for mums that are returning to work. If you run a business, or you've got a business, and you can you can work with some of what they need in terms of flexibility. If you can bring them back to work, there's a whole bunch of very experienced people that are willing to often take roles that they wouldn't have been looking to take a year or two earlier, right? To get back into that workforce and show what they can do, and you're getting people that really do think outside the box and have to solve problems every single day and communicate to kids and adults and all sorts of different people in a great way, right? So
right.
Yeah, there's a great workforce there.
I've always said those early kind of toddler years, if you're home with little people, you are getting a master's in human beings.
Right, yes.
They will try 1,000 ways to hack your baby gates, or all of the things. So
your risk management skills got to be pretty good, right?
Yeah, excellent. Honed for years.
Good. Well, look, I've got just the final question. We're already at the end of part 2. And so I've only got one more question for you. And I always end it on the same question. So I would love I'd love to know if you could go back and talk to your early career self, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give yourself?
There is this thing called cybersecurity, and it's going to be big. So get ready for it, and just always say yes. Always say yes to the next challenge. It's we do a lot of I do a lot of internal kind of thinking, and don't think so much. It's going to be okay.
Yeah, I like that. I like. There's been a path looking at your particular career path, right? There's been a series of times where you've had to say yes, or you haven't had to say yes, but you've chosen to say yes, right? You've said, okay, this might stretch me a bit. I'm not sure how I'm going to get to doing it, but I'm going to say yes to it anyway, because I know I'm capable of it. And it's kind of that mixture of being confident enough to say yes, even when you're not 100% feeling confident, and a level of being brave, right? I want my daughter to grow up and be brave enough to say yes, and be confident enough to figure out things up once she's done that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Good stuff. Well, look, thank you again, Melina. I so appreciate your time.
Enjoyed it too.
It's been lovely to talk to you, and really easy. Time went very, very quickly.
It did. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you to the audience as well. We appreciate everybody joining us for the Route to CISO podcast. Watch this space. Another episode to come out next Tuesday. Take care. Thank you for listening to the Route to CISO podcast. If there's something you really want me to ask on the next episode, or if you're a CISO who wants to inspire the next generation, please reach out. I'll leave a URL to my LinkedIn profile, and make sure you connect and message me there. We're always looking for feedback, so please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.